Okay, so let's start with the webinar today. So the focus of today's webinar is taking through the inverter setup of the GoodWe inverters for inverters from 1 kilowatt up to 50 kilowatts. Last week we went through the company profile of GoodWe, and we also went through the portfolio of the products that we offer. And also I went through a comparison of the GoodWe products against low price competitors, and focusing on really the weak points of competitors out there with low prices and a long-term warranty. If you missed out on the first webinar, please get in touch with us and we can share the webinar, or I can take you through personally the webinar again. My name is Carlos Silva. I'm the technical sales manager and the country manager for Eastern Europe. I'm responsible for the Eastern Europe regions, in particular Poland and Hungary. I've been in the PV industry since 2002. And I started in PV in Sydney, Australia, where I grew up, and I moved to Germany approximately 7 years ago, where I worked with Zeva Solar and the SMA group. And as of last year, since July, I started with GoodWe. First, I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, who's actually our client, Piotr Kizel, who is the managing director for Manitou Solar in Poland, and he can say a few words to you in Polish. Piotr, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you, Carlos. Thank you for this short introduction. Now I will switch into Polish to our Polish customers. Dzień dobry Państwu, witam serdecznie. Moje nazwisko Piotr Kisiel. Mam przyjemność kierować firmą Manitou Solar w Polsce. Tradycyjnie, jak na początku każdego webinarium, chciałem powiedzieć kilka słów na temat naszej firmy. Posiadamy już przeszło 12-letnie doświadczenie w branży fotowoltaicznej. W Polsce nasza firma istnieje od 5 lat. Mieścimy się w Warszawie, gdzie znajduje się nasz magazyn, nasze biuro. Stąd też realizujemy wszystkie wysyłki i wszystkie zamówienia dla Państwa na terenie Polski. Podkreślam to przy każdym webinarium, przy każdej możliwej okazji, więc dziś zrobię to ponownie. Nasza firma koncentruje się tylko i wyłącznie na dystrybucji elementów instalacji fotowoltaicznych. To oznacza, że nie startujemy w przetargach, nie sprzedajemy i nie oferujemy naszego sprzętu do klientów indywidualnych. Koncentrujemy się tylko i wyłącznie na współpracy z Państwem jako instalatorami. Bardzo sobie taką współpracę cenimy i to jest główny kierunek dalszego rozwoju naszej firmy również. Życzę Państwu, żeby ten dzisiejsza godzina czy półtorej godziny przyniosła jak najwięcej pożytecznej wiedzy i zapraszamy do kontaktu również po webinarium, czy to bezpośrednio ze mną, czy z Państwa opiekunem handlowym, czy z naszą osobą techniczną. Życzę udanego webinarium i serdecznie pozdrawiam. Thank you, Carlos. That's it from my side, and the floor is yours.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so maybe just to a little bit of clarification. The main audience for the webinar today is for the Polish audience, but I do understand there are some Hungarian attendees into here. So I apologize that I do not have any slides on Hungary itself. But the products that are available in Poland will also be available in Hungary. So at least we have some crossover there. So to give you an update, I thought I'd give you an update on the current market status in Poland. So the current legislation, I think, as you all know, there is a net metering scheme for micro installations up to 50 kilowatts. This consists of a simple registration process, which allows a very smooth and painless connection into the grid from your grid operator. As I understand, there are also subsidies up to 2,000 euros for PV plants up to 50 kilowatts. And these funds are available for up to approximately 200,000 PV plants if you take into account the amount of subsidies that are available and you divide it over the average size PV plant, which is around 5 kilowatts. At the same time, we have the 1 megawatt tender projects, which is an ongoing tender scheme. In 2019, I think up to 200 to 300 megawatts of PV plants, large-scale PV plants were awarded a feed-in tariff. This year, 2020, there will be another round of auctions with the results to be released towards the end of the year. And what's interesting as well for Poland is there is a missing element or missing support for PV plants between 50 kilowatts and 1 megawatt. So if the government was to release some mechanisms to allow the growth of these PV plants in this power class, I think the Polish PV industry will experience further growth in the future. So some market insights into what happened in the last quarter. So from January to March of 2020, approximately 43,000 micro installations were connected to the grid. And if we average that over the size of the PV plants, so according to our sales, the average size inverter was 5 kilowatts. So if we took that number as an average size, that equates to approximately 220 megawatts of new PV plants were connected to the grid. That is quite astonishing, especially for only a residential market. So if you were to extrapolate that across the year, Poland could theoretically install close to 1 gigawatt of just purely micro installations, which I think makes it one of the top 2 or top 3 countries in Europe or in the world. But as you know, as you already know, the 3-phase residential grid connect inverters are the most popular inverters in Poland and also in Hungary as well. The most popular inverters that we see being sold or being installed in Poland is between 4 to 6 kilowatts. And so we consider them the high runner products for Poland. And we also assume that this will be the case for Hungary when we enter into Hungary later in the year. As you know, the start of the year has been a challenge for us, I think, for the entire industry and the entire supply chain. The COVID-19 situation has definitely put a slowdown on the growth of the PV industry, not only just in Poland, but also in a lot of the regions in the world. This has created a lot of supply chain issues from the suppliers to all the way down to the installers and to the end customers. So just to give you an idea, it was China that was first experienced the brunt or the force of the coronavirus situation, which created a supply issue. They weren't allowed to, I guess, by virtue of the fact of not being able to work, the manufacturing of the BOS components such as inverters and PV solar panels was stopped. So for up to 1 to 2 months, we had a period of no manufacturing. And then in March, early April is when the factories began to begin producing. However, the COVID-19 situation spread over to the other regions in Europe. So although the production was ramping up, the issues that we were experiencing in Europe slowed even the sales and also the installation of the PV plants. And because of the COVID-19 situation, we do project that the new install capacity for Poland this year will be around 600 to 800 megawatts. So going from a 1 gigawatt market to a 800 megawatt market, although it's a slightly smaller number, I think there's still positives to take out of it. So for those who didn't join last week's webinar, I thought I'd just go quickly through the portfolio that we're offering for Poland, which was also applicable for Hungary. So this is the 1 to 50 kilowatt, what we call in Poland the micro installations. So in Q3 of 2020, we will have 5 inverter series which we'll be offering in Poland and in Hungary. So the first one is the single phase, which is the XS series, which is a brand new series that we're offering. And we also have the DNS series. And these inverters are available from 1 to 3.6 kilowatts, with the DNS range being distinguished by having 2 maximum power point trackers. So in our 3-phase range, we have power classes from 4 to 80 kilowatts, which are suitable for residential and also commercial PV plants if needed. So going quite quickly into the actual product itself. So I'm excited to announce that in Q3, we will be introducing these 3 new series of inverter products. So the XS series will replace the NS series. This uses a new inverter topology and technologically advanced components which allow the inverter to be produced in a much smaller footprint. So this 1 MPPT inverter is about the size of an A4 piece of paper and weighs only 5.8 kilograms. So in such a small body, it's possible to oversize a PV array by up to 130%. And combined with a higher European efficiency means that the customer will be producing more kilowatt hours per kilowatt peak installed. So a Wi-Fi connection comes standard with the inverter with the option to swap the Wi-Fi dongle with a LAN dongle if required. And the Wi-Fi connection allows the inverter to be connected to our SEMS monitoring portal, which is free of charge for everyone. So the DNS series is our single phase 2 MPPT offering. So when compared to other brands in its power class, it is found to be up to 30% lighter than similar products. Its 2 MPPTs allow flexibility in PV plant design by enabling east-west facing arrays and also a combination of long and short string lengths. And you can also put different technologies, connect different solar panel technologies on different PV arrays if required. The PV array oversizing is up to 130%. The export control can be realized by connecting our GoodWe 3000 GM3000 smart meter directly to the inverter, which measures the flow of electricity, which allows the inverter to calculate whether it has to increase its output to maintain the export limit. In addition to the SEMS monitoring, the DNS does have the option to come equipped with the integrated Tigo CCA monitoring device, which provides customer access to module level data for more detailed monitoring. The SDTG2 series inverter, which is one which I'm very, very excited about. This series replaces the existing SDTG1 series. And at 16 kilograms is 33% lighter than the G1, which makes it easier to transport, handle, and install. Some technological advancements in its design allows PV arrays to be oversized by up to 150%, which means, for example, you are able to connect 7.5 kilowatts to a 5 kilowatt G2 inverter. A 2 MPPT and a 1000 volt DC maximum input voltage provides a lot of flexibility when you're designing your PV arrays. And the SDTG2 can also be connected directly to a smart meter for export control. So this is what we believe is a truly advanced inverter, which I believe will make the most impact in Poland and in other regions in the EU. And the SMT is also a new series inverter, which is available in power classes of 25, 30, and 36 kilowatts. It comes with 3 MPPTs, which allows for even more flexibility in terms of PV array design. So by having more MPPTs, you reduce the impacts of losses due to shading and module mismatch. It can be ordered with type 2 SPDs, which adds further protection to surge voltages due to indirect lightning strikes, for example, on both the AC and DC side. And monitoring is also available in the form of Wi-Fi or LAN and can be connected to our SEMS monitoring platform. So the MT series, available in 50, 60, and 80 kilowatts, has been our most popular inverter to date for commercial PV plants from anywhere from 50 kilowatts to 20 megawatts. Its low voltage output of 380 volts is specifically designed for commercial and industrial low voltage applications. So this means that no external step up or step down transformer is required to connect into the low voltage grid. And it also comes equipped with 4 MPPTs and type 2 surge protection as a standard, and includes string fusing. So by virtue of its fans, the inverter has a full load operation of up to 50 degrees, which is significantly higher than inverters that are designed with no active cooling. So now I'll go to the main focus of this presentation, which is essentially the inverter setup of the GoodWe inverters. Our GoodWe inverters are designed to be quickly installed and quickly set up. So this presentation won't take you too long. The fundamentals or the principles of the setup apply to all inverters from 1 kilowatt to 50 to the 80 kilowatts. So I won't go into the detail of the setup of every single inverter, but what I'll do is I'll give you a broad presentation of what's required to bring an inverter to operation. So first of all, we start with the packaging. So what I do and I recommend installers is that they check the package to ensure that the contents that is stated in the manual are delivered with the inverter. In case you are missing any of the components that you see on the screen or that you see inside the manual, please contact your distributor like Manitou, or you can contact our service partner in Kalish and advise them which components you are missing, and then we'll be able to send you out the missing components. So these are the critical components that you're required to install the inverter. One point to note is that as you can see at the bottom, the Solar Go, the user guide of the Solar Go app is only supplied with inverters with no screen. But for the inverters that will be supplied to Poland and Hungary, these inverters will all have a LED screen, single line LCD screen. We also recommend that you avoid installing the inverter in locations which have direct exposure to sunlight, rain and snow. The inverters are equipped with an IP65 rating, so they can be installed outdoors, but it's always preferable to install them underneath, for example, the eave of a roof, or for example, in the Northern Hemisphere where we are now. If you have to install them outside, maybe a good place to install an inverter would be on the northern side of the wall, which is the south, which is a north facing, which doesn't receive a lot of direct sun throughout the day. In terms of the mounting, we do have maximum tilt allowances for every inverter. So please look inside the instruction manual to find the maximum tilt allowance. So for example, in this graphic here that we see on the screen, it's a DNS inverter, and this DNS inverter can be tilted at a maximum of 15 degrees to the vertical. Also, please observe the minimum clearance distances that we state in the manual, and these clearance distances are there for a reason. It's to allow the inverter to dissipate the heat efficiently and to allow the inverter to cool itself by way of convection cooling. We do supply the inverter with a mounting bracket. Every inverter has a slightly different type of mounting bracket depending on the size. Some are much smaller, some are much bigger. So just observe the mounting holes and the positioning of the holes themselves. All that's required to do is just to drill the holes into the wall, insert the expansion plugs, which are supplied with the inverter, into the holes, and then fasten the mounting plate with the supplied screws. As you can see, there's a little hook here where you simply hook the inverter on to the side. And on some mounting plates, we do have a locking, a hole which allows for a padlock or some kind of locking mechanism to secure the inverter onto the mounting plate itself. In terms of the AC conductor, the AC connection in the manual itself, we do provide recommendations on the size of the cables which can be used. So in this slide here, we are showing the maximum, the minimum and the maximum size for, I think, an XS inverter or an SDTG2. Sorry, SDTG2 inverter. So the terminal itself can accept up to 4 to 6 mil squared cable, which is large enough to handle the voltage drops and also the current that can potentially flow through the conductors. And observe also the AC isolator specification. So in the manual, we do make recommendations on the circuit breaker size. But again, observe your local regulations because different regions in Europe have different requirements in terms of how to calculate the size of your circuit breaker. In terms of the DC connection, for all inverters for Europe, we do provide MC4 connectors. So we provide the positive and the negative conductors, connectors. So usually what you do is you crimp the positive and negative pins onto the DC conductor. It is important, and I must highlight that you use the appropriate calibrated crimping tool. So use a crimping tool that is recommended or authorized by Stelbly or MC multi-contact. This will minimize the frequency of failures with regards to crimping. All you have to do is just insert the pin into the MC4 connector, tighten the connector gland, and then connect the connector into the inverter side of the inverter. For those who install the potential earth connection, we do provide a potential earth point on the side of the inverter. The earth locations are in different locations for different inverters. So just have a look at the manual and see where the terminal is. So we do provide, again, the terminals for the potential earth connection. And for the SDTG2, we recommend a 4 millimeter squared earth cable that will connect to the side of the inverter and will typically run to the earthing point of the house. One important thing for Europe, and this applies for all of the inverters, is that if the remote disconnect feature is not used, we need to ensure that regardless that the remote disconnect terminal is always connected to the inverter. If the remote disconnect terminal is not connected to the inverter, what will happen is that the inverter will go into waiting mode for no reason at all. But once you connect this remote disconnect terminal into the inverter will start operating. So for the XS series, which is similar for the SDTG2 and the SMT, we supply this remote disconnect or communication connector here. And inside we have a cable which is short circuiting pins 4 and 5. So this cable must be connected to pins 4 and 5 for the inverter to operate. And once this cable is usually supplied, and once it's connected, all you have to do is connect the cable, the connector into the bottom of the inverter here. For the MT series, the remote disconnect terminal is slightly different. It's actually a green 4-pin terminal, which you can see here on the right-hand side. You can see the short circuit again across terminals pin 1 and 2, and this must be inserted. Otherwise, the inverter again will go into waiting mode. So just be conscious of the fact that you need to have this remote terminal connected in case you're not using the remote shutdown feature. For the first type of operation, what we usually do is the inverter will ask you to select the country code. So you can use the button here on the right-hand side, which is on the XS series, it's the GoodWe logo, and on the SDTG2 series, it's an enter button. So you use this button to scroll through and to select the settings themselves. So on the first time operation, so the very first time that you turn on the DC switch, you will be asked to select the country, and then you short press the button to scroll through the countries. And once you've found the correct safety setting, then you long press on the button. And then after approximately 5 to 10 seconds, the inverter will go to the model screen, sorry, the main menu screen. If, for example, the wrong safety code was selected during commissioning, you are able to change the country code. So all you need to do is to short press the buttons on either inverter until you see the model screen. The model screen will show you the actual model number of the inverter itself, and then you will also see the production of the inverter as well. So once you reach this screen, long press the button again to enter into the country code menu, and then short press the buttons to select the grid code. So for example, you will, in this case, we can see Germany on the screen. And so once you see the correct country code, simply leave the button, release the button, and the menu will go back to the main menu again. As you can see, the menu will be shown as normal and will show the power output of the inverter. So it's very simple to set the country code. And we also do recommend to set the time and date setting to help synchronize with the SEMS portal, and also to help you determine when faults or errors occurred within the PV plant on occasions. So to set the time, all you have to do is short press the button until you see the set time menu. And once you see the set time menu, long press the button to enter into the time and date, and you short press to change the highlighted number, and then you long press again to move to the next number. And then once you've entered all the numbers correctly, simply long press at the end of the last number, and then the LCD screen will, or release the button and the LCD screen will go back to the main menu. For the SMT series, it has a graphical display, so it's slightly different to the XS, the DNS, and the G2 inverter. As you can see, there's 4 buttons. We have an enter button, up and down arrows, and an escape button. So again, it's quite simple to set the country code. So you press the arrow buttons until you see the configuration menu, and you select basic. And once you select basic, it'll take you to another menu, which will show you the country code. So highlight the country code with using the arrow buttons, and then on the country code menu, just select the country that you require, and then press enter to confirm the setting. And then that country code will be set in the inverter itself. For the time and date setting, it's a similar process. You enter the basic configuration menu again, and then you select this time, date and time, and you scroll through using the arrows and the enter button to enter the year, the month, the date, and the hour and the minutes. And then you press the enter button at the end to confirm the settings for the SMT inverter. For the MT inverter, again, it's very similar to the SMT inverter. As you can see from this slide, the graphical display is almost identical. The menus itself, the layout is slightly different. So you need to press the enter button and use the arrows to select safety. And then once you've entered safety, it'll bring you into the different country codes, and you use the arrows to select the country code that you need, and then you press enter to confirm, and then it'll take you back to the main menu. And the next is to, again, set the date and time. Again, why this is important is for this inverter, when you're checking some error logs, by having the correct time and date, it'll show you the correct time and dates of when those errors happened. So you'll be able to troubleshoot more efficiently when you encounter problems with the inverter. So again, you're using your buttons to go into the date and time menu and changing the time using the arrows and also the dates and pressing enter, and it'll take you back into the main screen. So now I'll take you into smart SEMS, smart energy management system. So once you've set up the inverter for operation, the next part of the commissioning or the setup is the monitoring, most usually. And just to give you an overview of the SEMS portal that we do offer, the SEMS portal can be accessed from this web address up the top there. And once you've registered, you can enter your email address and a password and you can log in. So when you've logged in, you can see your PV plant that belongs to you, and the SEMS portal will show you some information about how much power it's producing in the last 5 minutes. If it's a battery storage system, it'll show you the state of charge of the battery and the current state of the battery, whether it's charging or discharging. It will also show you some information in regards to the generation and the income saved for the day and for the lifetime of the operation of the inverter. We can also see some PV graphs. For grid connect inverters for Poland and Hungary, you will only see the PV curve. However, if you are installing energy storage inverters, such as a hybrid inverters, then you'll also be able to see the load consumption profile, the state of charge, the charge and the battery, charge and discharge powers, and also the import and export from the energy meter. Also see on the left-hand side, the basic info, which is entered when you're setting up in the beginning. You can see the address, the PV capacity, the type of battery model and capacity, and the date it was created. When you've selected the right location, you do see the weather forecast for that location for the next 5 days. And on the bottom, you see some device information. So it shows you things like the serial number, some voltages on the AC/DC, and some currents as well. On the SEMS monitoring platform, we do have an option for a dashboard screen, which gives you a pictorial representation of the PV plants that are under your management or under your account. And this is a very highly customizable dashboard, which can show the information of different PV plants. You can actually set up to show your customers how many PV plants you have currently under development or under installation. And it gives you an overall idea of the total generation of all your PV plants. So this dashboard is quite useful for customers who would like to install like a display system in the foyer of their office. So the account structure of the SEMS. So we have an administrator account. So usually the administrator is your distributor. So in this case, it will be Manitou Solar. And Manitou Solar has the authorization to create what we call installer accounts. So you as an installer can ask Manitou Solar to create an installer account for you. And you will be signed an installer or a dealer code. So this dealer code allows you to keep track of all the PV plants that are installed under your account. So every installer can install the PV plants under their own installer accounts. And then every end user can also then monitor their PV plant under that has been installed by them by their installer. In addition, the administrator, which can also be you if you like, you can also create an O&M account. So you could have a designated person in your office monitoring each PV plant, and they will have access to all the PV plants that are installed by all of the installers in your business. So this account structure allows you to have a really good and in-depth overview of the PV plants that are installed in your business. So to create a PV plant, so before we set up the PV plant on SEMS, what we do is we establish a Wi-Fi or an internet connection from the inverter to the GoodWe servers. So typically I recommend our customers or the installers to use a PC or a mobile device and to use the web interface of the inverter to set up the Wi-Fi. So each inverter comes with its own solar Wi-Fi access point, and the access point is defined by this name, solar Wi-Fi, and 8 numbers. And the 8 numbers of the solar Wi-Fi, the last 8 digits, or the 8 digits of this solar Wi-Fi access point is actually the last 8 digits of the serial number of the inverter itself. So select the correct solar Wi-Fi access point, and then after you can open your browser. I recommend using a Google Chrome, which for me works flawlessly. And then you enter the IP address of the web server interface, which is 10.10.100.253. And then once you enter, you have to enter the admin and the login and the password, which is admin. And once you're inside the web interface, you can select here, click Start Setup. And then the next screen will ask you to select the wireless network that you want to connect to, which is usually the customer's wireless network. And after you click on Next, it'll ask you to enter the password of the customer's router. And so once you click on Next, it'll take maybe up to 1 to 5 minutes for the inverter to connect to the router and to the servers itself. So in able to assist you in understanding when the inverter does have a connection to the router and the internet, we have a series of blink codes. So for the XS, the DNS, and the SDTG2 inverter, we have 3 blink codes which signify the current status of the Wi-Fi. So the first one is blink 2. So when you see the power LED blink twice and have a short pause in the middle, this means that the inverter is not connected to the router. So you will go through the web server interface to connect to the router. So once it's connected to the router, you will then see the power will be solid on. So this means that the Wi-Fi is connected to the router and it's connected to the server. If the inverter is connected to the router but is not connected to the GoodWe server, the power LED will blink 4 times in a row. And usually this means that there is a firewall in between the inverter and the GoodWe servers themselves. So you can contact us and we will share with you the server address of the SEMS portal, and we'll also share with you the port number so that you can allow access of the inverter through the firewalls to the GoodWe servers. For the SMT and the MT, we have a similar type of blink system. So when it's connected to the router, this cloud, SEMS cloud logo will be solid green. If there is a router problem, so if it's not connected to the router, it will blink twice. If there's a problem with the connection to the server itself, then it will blink 4 times. So once you've connected to the server, it's time to create the PV plant. So simply log into your SEMS account. Click on the top here, create PV plant. And then you can enter the email address of the owner. So it's typically the homeowner. Optional, you can also add some visitors. So if the homeowner would like to add other people in their family to also view their PV plant on the SEMS portal, they can add them in this section of the setup at the bottom here. And then the next screen will take you to the setup screen of the actual PV plant itself. So you can enter the PV plant here. So we give it a default name based on the order of when the PV plant was installed. You can change the name to whatever you like, and you can enter the PV array capacity in kilowatts. So it's important that you put kilowatts and not watts, because I have seen 4.6 kilowatt systems, and I have seen them actually entered as 4,600 kilowatts. So that actually means 4.6 megawatts rather than 4.6 kilowatts. Here in the classification, we have 4 options. So for grid connect inverters, in particular for Poland and Hungary, you should select the residential, which is the PV only. If you're installing a battery storage system or a hybrid inverter, you would select battery storage. And you also have the options for selecting commercial rooftops or a ground mount PV system as well. You can enter your profit ratio though. So this is basically the cost of electricity that you buy from your retailer, and this will calculate essentially how much money you're saving over the lifetime of the system. Here you can enter the quantity of solar panels. Here in this distributor code, if you have been set up as an installer by Manitou or by someone else, this field, distributor code field, will be automatically populated with your unique installer or distributor code. So this will allow your colleagues who also are in the same organization, on the same account structure, to also view this PV plant for monitoring purposes. So after this, you just click submit, and then you simply select the location. You have the option to click on the map and then search the Google Maps and to locate the actual place of the PV system where it's been installed. You can move the red marker, or you can enter the address in the top left-hand corner, and then click OK once you've selected the right location. And by selecting the right location or the correct the correct city or the town, the weather forecast on the main screen will be correct. Once you're happy, you have the option to ignore if the location is correct. So if you selected the right location, then you press ignore. If you accidentally selected the incorrect location, then just hit to relocate to select the correct location, the PV plant. As I mentioned before, this is pre-populated for the installer account, so there is no need to enter this code. However, there are cases when the end user will set up their own PV plant under their own private account. If they do this, then you could ask them to enter your dealer or distributor code into their field, into this field, so that when the PV plant is set up, it allows you to also monitor their PV plant. Once this is all done, then simply select, click on submit. And then a new account will be registered. The PV owner, if they're not registered with the SEMS, they'll be sent an email with the registration link to click on and an initial password, which they will be forced to change when they log into the SEMS portal for the first time. So to add an inverter to the PV plant itself, you can click on here, add, and then simply enter the serial number of the inverter and the check code, which is located on the label of the inverter on the side. It's a 6-digit number, and you can also assign an alias or a name to the inverter itself, and you can press submit. And then this inverter will be added to your PV plant. And then once it has been added, then you will be able to see it online on your PV plant list. And that's as simple as that. That's very simple setup for the GoodWe inverters. Of course, there are a lot more other features that that are available, which we'll take you through later at a later stage, perhaps via webinars or via face-to-face trainings when I visit Poland or or in Hungary as well. So I hope to meet many of you when travel restrictions have been relaxed. If anyone has any questions, they do have the opportunity to answer, to ask some questions in the chat or the Q&A. In the Q&A section of the Zoom webinar. Piotr, if you would like maybe to say a few words in Polish, maybe to explain some of the customers that they can, if they would like to ask a question, they can do so using the Q&A option.
Yeah, thank you, Carlos. Szanowni Państwo, jeżeli mają Państwo jakieś pytania w tym momencie, można takowe zadawać w sekcji Q&A. Tam bardzo proszę napisać swoje pytanie. Może być również w języku polskim. Ja chętnie przetłumaczę Carlosowi na angielski i będziemy udzielać odpowiedzi.
Carlos, this is Richard. There's already, you can open the chat. There's already 2 questions which you could maybe answer.
Yeah. Well, let me go. Wait. I can't see them. Can you maybe cut and paste them, please, into the? Chat. Here, sorry, here we go. Okay, so the first question that we received earlier in the webinar from Uran, will the AFCI function be available in inverters with a power less than 10 kilowatts? So this is the automatic fault current interrupter. From my understanding, yes, they will be available for the G2 inverter, so from 4 to 25 kilowatts. However, it will be available as an option. So if you require the AFCI function, it needs to be ordered from the factory itself. So the oversizing, how does the oversizing look on 2 sides of east and west? So typically when you're oversizing, when you're designing east-west systems, you do have the option of increasing the PV array that's connected. So I would say for an east and west, anywhere from 50 to 80%, you could probably oversize each array, because in the morning that a part of the east will receive the most part of sun, but as the sun travels across the day, then the west will take over. So I think from anywhere from 50 to 100% oversize will be okay for an east and west configuration. Is the my question to the audience, is the AFCI function, is that a mandatory function for Poland, or is that a feature that is a nice to have feature? It seems that we don't have any more questions coming through. Okay, so we'll end the webinar there. So thank you again for joining the webinar. It was quite a quick webinar this week. Next week, we'll be going through the commercial PV plants and our commercial inverters in depth, more in-depth detail in the next webinar. And then, as I said before, hopefully I get to meet a lot of you in person over the coming months, and hopefully be able to give you a better understanding of the GoodWe products that we have on offer. So thank you again. Piotr, if you'd like to say some parting words.
Yes, thank you. Dziękuję wszystkim Państwu za udział za udział w dzisiejszym webinarium. Życzę miłego dnia i serdecznie zapraszamy również do udziału w kolejnym webinarium, które odbędzie się 22 i będzie poświęcone systemom komercyjnym. Życzę wszystkim miłego dnia i serdecznie pozdrawiam. Thank you, Carlos. Have a nice day. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Piotr. Bye bye.